Hi guys, welcome back. Today we're going to do a little tea time video. My family and I are all a little bit tea obsessed, if I'm being honest. So I thought it would be fun if I showed you guys how I plan a very classy afternoon tea. It's something that my mom and I really enjoy doing. My sister-in-law's birthday was the other day, and what with it being quarantine and everything, she asked if we could just do a family tea, and we thought we'd make something real special out of it. So today I am going to show you exactly what I do to plan a tea, how I pick what foods we're going to have with each course, how to kind of go about pairing your tea to what you're serving food-wise, and I'll even show you a little bit of some of our service pieces and things like that, which I thought you guys might really enjoy. But let's go ahead and get started, and we will begin by looking at a few different dishes and kind of figuring out how to make a course based on those first dishes. So for us, we really like to start with a specific recipe that maybe we found and we kind of want to build something around. And for this tea, that is actually a recipe we found in Teatime magazine. I really like Teatime magazine. I think it's fun to subscribe. I know a lot of people find that you can find most of the information on the website, but actually the recipe we're going to start with is one that we tried to look up on the website after finding it in the magazine, and it is not on the website. So that's kind of something to keep in mind while you're looking at stuff, is that if you do get a magazine and find a recipe there, there's no guarantee that you'll also find it online. So in here, this is the March-April 2020 edition. I have it down on page 41 is the recipe that we are going to start with. Because right here is a chilled sweet pea soup, and my sister-in-law loves sweet peas. That is not an exaggeration in any sense of the word. She loves sweet peas. So when we came across this recipe, we just knew we were going to have to do this sweet pea soup. And I like how here it's served in a teacup. We haven't exactly decided how we're going to serve it yet, but that's something that we will probably not figure out till the day of. So I will try to snap some pictures for you on the day of so you guys can see what everything looks like and how it all turned out as well. But yeah, so this is a chilled sweet pea soup that we wanted to start with. In case you are curious, the ingredients are butter, leeks, chicken broth, frozen peas, fresh mint leaves, salt, whipping cream, and then a garnish of mint leaves. And that just sounded delicious and so very afternoon tea, and it's nice and springy, so something that we thought we could build a recipe around. So from there, once you have found a recipe for like a starter, for example, this would be in our starters course. We do 3 courses when we do a tea, so we have, at least from now we do, so you start with a starter course and you'll have a specific tea with that. You'll have a bread or scones course and you'll have a specific tea with that. And then you'll have a desserts course and you'll have a different tea with that. Sometimes you'll serve these with like Prosecco or with a cordial or something like that as well. Kind of varies depending on the season and what you have in mind for your tea. I think we are considering doing a Prosecco maybe with some raspberries for this tea. But we haven't exactly decided yet, so we will see. Anyway, once you've come up with one recipe, you kind of got to decide how many different little things you want to do. So for most of the teas that I've been to, your starter course has at least 4 to 7, I would say, little bite-sized dishes. They're not really a dish, it's more like a tasting. The thing with an afternoon tea is that it is really a tasting menu. It's a bunch of little tiny dishes that when put together make up a giant meal, really. When you go to an afternoon tea, a lot of people, especially in the States, think this is not going to be enough food for me. There's no way that that's going to be enough food. And then by the time you get to the desserts course, you're staring at it going, how am I going to finish all that? I don't have any room left in me. So that's something that's really fun for me with afternoon tea, is kind of trying to trick people a little bit and be like, oh yeah, you think you can eat all this? That's why there's only one of everything for each of you. So once you have found a recipe that you want to build around, like for us, the pea soup, you can start going through some more Teatime magazines. I have a couple of them here. You can go through those. You could find some tea books, like I have these 2 afternoon tea books up here. You can even go to the internet and just see what you can find that would go with it. For starting with a cold soup, we thought that the next logical choice would be to make like a salad shooter. So rather than it being a kind of like a big salad like you get in a restaurant where you have to kind of cut it up and make it fit in your mouth because it's salad and salad doesn't want to, we thought we would do something where we actually cut it up into little bite-sized pieces so that you can eat it with a very small utensil, specifically with a teaspoon, like this guy here. So specifically, we want you to be able to eat everything with nothing but this spoon. So everything either has to be finger food or has to be something that you can eat very easily in tiny little bites with a tiny little spoon. So for us, we decided that our next little mini dish for our starter course would be an arugula salad with a peach vinaigrette. And we have a bunch of different flavored balsamic vinegars. We have white balsamics, we have dark balsamics, but we have all sorts. So coming up with this was actually super easy for us. We just figured we have dried blueberries in the pantry that we have there as a staple, because if you can find dried blueberries, why wouldn't you have dried blueberries in your pantry? I mean, it's a dried blueberry, guys. I told you I like tea. Anyway, so we decided to go with a peach vinaigrette because we thought that would be a nice light vinaigrette to go with the pea soup that wouldn't clash flavor-wise, but also would have enough difference of a flavor profile that they wouldn't meld into one. Then obviously you're going to want to have a tea sandwich, and it's completely up to you, whatever you want to do. A lot of people will do the very stereotypical cucumber sandwich. Some people will do like a salmon salad or even an egg salad sandwich. We decided to go with an herbed chicken salad sandwich. And our plan is that we're going to do it on a wheat bread, and we'll cut them into little cubes. Not quite a cube, little rectangles. And we're growing chives in the backyard, so we're going to tie it up with a little chive. So it'll be like a little present. It'll be super cute. And so now we've gotten a little bit more into the slightly more savory side of things, because remember, peas are quite sweet, so that will end up being fairly sweet. A vinaigrette, especially peach, is going to be sweet. Our chicken salad is starting to get us a little more into the savory side of things. So we thought that our next good option here is a quiche. And quiche is also a really good, almost a staple for tea time. It's something that is in a lot of afternoon teas, just a little mini quiche. Not something that you're going to have to, again, get a fork and a knife for, but something that you can pick up with your fingers and eat it in 2 to 3 bites. Our main goal with a tea is to have nothing that's going to take you more than 2 or 3 bites. A soup or a salad isn't going to count for that, because the soup will obviously take you several more bites to eat it, as well as small salad. That's just something to keep in mind, something to remember while you're planning and while you're trying to figure out what exactly you want to make. So in our tea, we had decided to go with 6 things in our starters or savories course. So at this point, we have the pea soup, we have the salad, we have an herbed chicken salad sandwich, and we have a quiche, which is a leek and bacon quiche. So that's very savory, probably the most savory that we want to go. We don't really want to go beyond the bacon level of savory. My mom and I really enjoy puff pastry, so we wanted to do at least one thing with puff pastry in our tea. So our next thing is a caramelized shallot, parmesan, and thyme puff pastry spiral. So this is where you would roll up your caramelized shallots, your parmesan, and your thyme in a sheet of puff pastry, roll it all up, refrigerate it, cut it into slices, and then bake it. So you'll end up with these little, almost like a savory cookie kind of thing. And they're super, super good. We haven't tried this particular recipe yet, but just looking at it, I know it'll be delicious. And last but not least, because it is so traditional and such a staple in your savories or starters, we wanted to do a radish and cucumber crostini. If you don't do something cucumber, it almost feels wrong. It isn't wrong. There's nothing wrong with not doing cucumber. If you don't like cucumber, don't use cucumber. I myself don't like cucumber, but I will use it not infrequently at a tea because it is such a light flavor and such a very traditional flavor for a savories course, especially at an afternoon tea. Now that we've figured out our 6 bites for our savories, we have to figure out a tea that pairs well with these. And there's a general rule of thumb when it comes to pairing your tea with your food. For me, I like to have an herbal or a white tea with my dessert course because dessert, you're already running out of room. You don't need a heavy black tea or a pu'er or something like that that's just going to weigh you down even more. You want something nice and light and uplifting when you get to dessert. When you're in the breads course or the scones course, you can almost do whatever you want. You almost have free reign, and it depends entirely on the type of breads you decide to serve. If you're serving a rosemary roll, you might want to do a black tea that will stand up more to that rosemary. If you're doing just cream scones, you can really do whatever kind of tea you want. In the case of a savories course, the safest bet is to either do a green tea or an oolong. And for us, we decided to do an oolong, and that is actually what I am drinking here. This is the oolong that we chose. Hold on just a second and I'll get it for you from the shelf. So this is our Valley Orchard Medley tea from Old Barrel Tea Company here in town. This is an oolong with apple pieces, marigold flowers, apricots, and some other natural flavors. They actually recommend blending this one with ginger or lemongrass as well, but we thought that this kind of orchardy flavor would go really well with the food that we had picked out for this course. Oolongs in general tend to be a little bit smokier and can be a little bit more subtle, which is why it'll generally go well with a starter. It is about medium bodied, so it's not going to be too heavy to go with your starter, but it is robust enough that it'll stand up to some of those more intense flavors that you might have in your starter. As I've just explained to you, most of our flavors are fairly mild, so we wanted to go with something that wouldn't overpower at all. Now, of course, when you are serving an afternoon tea, you do not use tea bags. That is uncouth. You are serving your tea in a nice teapot, and in this teapot you will use a tea strainer, and in this tea strainer you will put your loose leaf tea. All of the teas you'll see on the shelf behind me, aside from a few little straggler tea bags, are loose leaf. These are teas where it is literally just leaves and flowers and dried fruits that we steep in warm water for a delicious tea flavor. You will get, when you use a loose leaf tea, a much more robust flavor, a much more well-rounded flavor and a much truer flavor to the tea. You may end up with some particulate in the bottom of your teapot. That's fine. You don't generally serve that last little bit of tea from the bottom of the pot because the leaves themselves can be quite bitter. But in general, it is safe to assume that if you are serving an afternoon tea or if you are going to an afternoon tea, you should be served or be serving a loose leaf tea. So in our case, we like to use stuff from Old Barrel. They're a company that's local to us, very easy to get to, and very, very high quality teas. They mix and blend everything themselves. I really like them. So now we've finished our starters or savories course, and from here we're going to move on to the breads or scones course. So when we are choosing a bread or scone to serve, again, we'll usually begin by picking a recipe that we think sounds delicious, of course, and goes kind of mostly well with the savories or starters as well. You don't want your flavors to clash. So if you have mostly spring flavors in your starter or savories course, you don't want to serve something pumpkin spice in your breads or scones course. So for us, we thought that a cream scone would be the most ideal thing to follow our savories, because a cream scone goes really with whatever you put it with. We always do 2 different scones or breads, or a scone and a bread, in this course. So for us, doing a cream scone meant that we could also do something really fun for our second scone. So we happen to have here in town this place called the St. James Tea Room, and this is a very fine dining afternoon tea place in the middle of New Mexico that serves very proper English tea. And they have released this book of their signature tastes. While we were at tea with them, oh goodness, a few months ago I suppose, we had this rose and almond scone that you'll see here. And again, remember, this tea is for my sister-in-law, and she loved these scones, so we thought that would be ideal to serve at her tea. So we have this almond and rose scone, and we have a cream scone. Now always, in your scones course, you have to serve a clotted cream or something similar. We don't really have clotted cream here in the US, but you can make it yourself. You can also just mix some mascarpone cream, maybe with a little bit of whipping cream and some powdered sugar, and you should get something similar. I'll try to find a recipe and put that in the description box for you. You can also make clotted cream, but it's a process and it takes a very long time. I don't recommend it. You can find it for purchase at a few stores, but it is a specialty product, and if it's not your favorite product in the world, why spend the money and time on it? So, mascarpone will do in a pinch, but if possible, clotted cream or Devonshire cream is preferred. We do also like to serve our bread or scones course with a curd, be it a lemon curd or an orange curd, or in this case, a raspberry curd. Again, it's not something that we've made before, but it is something that we've had before, and they are very good. And it is a nice light tartness that we thought would pair very well with the almond and rose, without overpowering anything from the savories course, and without completely obliterating that cream scone. So remember, the cream scone is also incredibly delicious, and we don't want to outshine it by everything else around it. Now that we have selected our 2 breads, or scones in this case, we can move on to the tea once again. Remember, you want your teas to go with each other, not fight with each other, and to taste very well together. So we decided to go with what is called the Enchanted Forest, which is from another tea company here in town. This is Enchanted Forest. It's from Hadley Tea Company here in Albuquerque, and it is a green tea. It is fruity and almondy, and I'm going to smell it because I love the way it smells. It almost, to me, smells like candy. It's very sweet and very, very delicious almond flavor that we thought would pair exceptionally well, especially with that almond and rose scone. So now that we have figured out our savories or starters course and our breads or scones course, we of course move on to dessert, which is arguably the funnest course to figure out. And for us this was a really fun one because we had no idea where we wanted to go with this, but we knew we wanted to go fruity because if there's one thing my sister-in-law loves, it's fruit. So we knew we wanted to do something fruity, but that was really all that we knew and all that we really had to go on. So again, we went to our tea books like the ones behind me, and we went to Teatime magazine, of course, and ended up just kind of going off what we had seen while we were going through things before. And I had happened upon these financiers in this edition of Teatime. Let me see if I can find them. Yeah, here. So these are pistachio financiers, these guys right here. See if you can see that. And it's kind of like a cross between a cookie and a cake. I'm gonna call it a cakey. It's just a little pistachio, like a mini cake with some whipped cream on top. And it's got some orange zest in it, and it just sounded delicious and like it would be a really nice way to kind of tie it in with the scones course, in which we had that almond rose and of course the almond tea. So starting off with those, we thought, okay, what else can we do that's fruity, maybe has a little bit of zing to it, and it would still go with the pistachio. And we found these lemon, pineapple, and macadamia phyllo cups. And they look really, really fun. They're just like a little, you can buy at the store these little, they're like this big, these little phyllo pastry cups that's filled with this amalgamation, for lack of a better word, of lemon, pineapple, and macadamia. And they just look so yummy. And my sister-in-law has a great affinity for Hawaii, and it sounded very Hawaiian and very tropical and just very her, so we thought that would be really fun. We also came across online these orange black tea and olive oil shortbread cookies, and I for one am really fond of a shortbread cookie or a shortbread anything really. I really like shortbread. I also really like an olive oil cake. I find them absolutely delicious. So putting the two together was like a no-brainer for me. That sounds perfect. Let's add that in. And then last but not least, a couple of years back, we did a really fancy dinner for Valentine's Day just for fun. And our dessert course was a Riesling gelée with a strawberry conserve on the top. And unfortunately, my sister-in-law was out of town when we made this dinner. And we have been talking since we made that dinner about the fact that we'd need to make these for her. So that was really very much a no-brainer once it occurred to us that that needed to be kind of the final tasting for the dessert course. And that was just going to be the thing that really tied it together and brought it home, and just finish it with something nice and light and nice and fruity and just really yummy but not heavy, because the dessert course can very easily get very, very heavy to the point that there's just no way you can finish it all, especially if you do a very chocolate heavy dessert course. So if you are going to do a chocolate, like a little brownie or a little fudge cake or something in your desserts course, make sure that the other items in your course are very light in comparison, not so light that the dark chocolate or the brownie or whatever will overpower them, but light enough that you can still finish everything comfortably and not feel like you gotta undo your pants because you've eaten way too much. Now for us, this is the one course we haven't actually finalized what kind of tea we'll be having with our course. We are debating a honeysuckle white because we thought something nice and floral would go quite well with these fruity dessert items, and we didn't want to go with something too fruity as everything that we have to eat is very fruity. So that'll be something we'll be playing with over the weekend. Our intention, and what I highly recommend for you to do as well if you are doing a tea, is to make as much as you can the day before and have some little like tastings of all of your savories, for example, and try a few different teas with it, and make a cup of tea and split it into 3 different vessels and have one be black, have one with sugar, and one with cream, so that when you do serve your tea, you have a recommendation you can make to your guests. That is something that I really appreciate when I go to a tea. I like that my host has already had this, has had a pairing with it, and knows how they like it. That to me is just something really above and beyond. It's not something you have to do, but it's something that I really appreciate, that your guests will really appreciate, and that I find really fun when putting a tea together. So at this point, we have our whole menu put together. We have our starters or savories with a Valley Orchard medley tea, which I showed you earlier. We have our breads or scones course with the Enchanted Forest tea, and we have a desserts course that we're thinking a floral tea with, probably an herbal tea, but likely not something fruity because our desserts are all very fruity. So essentially, that's all there is to it, to designing your foods for your tea. You want to make sure that they are complementary to each other, that there's not one single food that's going to completely overpower everything else on the tray. You want to make sure that there is a small enough amount of food that your guests will feel comfortable eating everything, but a large enough amount of food that your guests will not have to eat when they go home. That is essentially what makes the best kind of afternoon tea, in my opinion. And as someone who likes afternoon tea very much, I hope that you will take that opinion very seriously, because I take my tea very seriously, you guys. Very seriously indeed. But anyway, at this point I thought I would just show you a few little touches that you can add to your teas to make them extra special for your guests and to make them a little bit more fun for you. So like I said earlier, when you're serving a tea, you will be serving out of a nice teapot. You won't be serving just teacups with tea bags. You will want to serve out of a lovely teapot. This one is a 1940s Sadler that I found for my mother. This was a Christmas gift that I got her a few years back, and she very kindly allowed me to show it in this video. But this one it's one of my favorite styles. I love the Sadler teapots, but there's just something so iconically tea about serving an afternoon tea in a very gorgeous teapot like this. Let's see if it'll focus. It's got these hand-painted gold on them. It's just this lovely, lovely teapot, and one that I am so thankful that I was able to find for her. It is also, in my opinion, I love to serve tea in vintage, but if you have a nice teapot that's not vintage, go ahead and use it. But do definitely bring out your teapot, bring out your very nice cups and saucers that are just very classically English tea, and don't forget pinkies up, because that's always super fun. There's just something very classic about serving an afternoon tea with the proper silverware. Also, always make sure to have a cream and sugar set on your table. This one again is vintage. This is from the Royal Albert line. I don't remember what year it's from, but these are just gorgeous. Let's see if it'll focus. Block my face. Okay, there we go. These actually you can see on Downton Abbey. I noticed they used this line of china. So that was really fun for me to see. I have a matching sugar bowl here. And I love to serve sugar cubes at tea. So I have these very rough brown sugar cubes. So I like to serve these. I know that they can be fairly large, but remember, if your guests are very fond of sugar in their tea, what you would do in your little tiny teacup, you would pour your tea, add your sugar cube, and you would sip off the top of your cup of tea and continually add tea to your cup until your sugar is gone. So you never finish that little bit in the bottom, because that's going to be mostly sugar and not very good. You will wait and continue adding tea to your cup until you have finished that sugar, and then would need more. And usually by that point you've finished your first or second or whatever, you finished your pot of tea and are ready for the next one. So it also makes sense for that to be time to add a new sugar cube. And you can find these cute little rock ones online. You can find them in tea shops all over the place, but I really like those. I think they're a really fun touch to add to your tea. I like to get fun little silverware too. I showed you our little gold spoon. Has a really cute dainty little rose on the end, and we happened to find little tongs that are almost the exact same that we just found somewhere completely different. Like I said earlier, you do want to make sure that you're serving a loose leaf tea, just because you'll get a much better flavor out of your tea. Just doing a little tea strainer is plenty. You'll fill it about halfway up with tea, and you'll put this in your pot, pour your hot water in. When you steep your tea, make sure you cover it with a cozy so that it stays nice and hot and it is the proper temperature when it's served. Also, make sure to look up what temperature your water should be to steep your tea at. If you're doing a green tea, you'll want it to be a little bit cooler. If you're doing a black tea, you'll want it quite hot. There's a lot of information online on how exactly to do that. But the nice thing with this kind of a tea strainer is that it has this nice little chain on the end. So when you put it in your teapot, you can loop that chain around the handle and hook it on itself so that your strainer won't fall inside and you won't have to figure out a way to fish it out. We have had to do that before, and yes, it is as annoying as it sounds like. Anyway, you guys, that's pretty much the basics for how to set up a tea and how to plan your tea. Also a little bit on kind of how to make it a little bit more special for your guests. I hope that this is something you guys enjoyed. If you want to see more like this, if you want to see maybe a little tea time role play or something, we can definitely work that out. Let me know in the comments what you want to see in the future. I would love to talk more about tea. As you can probably tell, it's something that I just really enjoy and honestly can't get enough of. So thank you all so much for watching. Come back next week for new videos, and see you next time.